Entiende que no puedo y a veces me pierdo. Cuando me enamoro, a veces desespero. Cuando me enamoro, cuando menos me lo espero, me enamoro. Se detiene el tiempo, me viene el alma al cuerpo. Sonrío cuando me enamoro. Si la luna sería tu premio, yo juraría hacer cualquier cosa por ser su dueño, por ser tu dueño. Y si en tus sueños escuchas el llanto de mis lamentos, en tus sueños no sigas dormida, que es verdadero. Ay, no es un sueño, no. Me alegro que a veces el final no encuentre su momento. Oh no, cuando me enamoro, a veces desespero. Cuando me enamoro, cuando menos me lo espero, me enamoro. Se detiene el tiempo, me viene el alma al cuerpo. Sonrío, sonrío cuando me enamoro. A veces desespero cuando me enamoro. Cuando menos me lo espero, me enamoro. Se detiene el tiempo, me viene el alma al cuerpo, al cuerpo. Sonrío, sonrío cuando me enamoro.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to invite you to take your seats at this time as our session is about to begin. Also, as a courtesy to our speakers and your fellow attendees, please take a moment and silence your cell phones. Thank you.
Como la vida, el amor es así. Nace de la nada y se
Please welcome the co-chairs of Prepárate, Iván Berumen and Heather Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. Each year, the College Board presents the Modelo de la Comunidad Award to a person or organization that has demonstrated outstanding leadership and commitment to the improvement of the Latino community. Recipients of this award must have a proven track record that shows their dedication and commitment to creating an educated society. In other words, they must have played a substantial part in creating, providing, or facilitating educational access and equity for Latino students. Previous recipients include John Quiñones, Alejandra Ceja, Dr. Eduardo Pardon, and Dr. Richard Caraza. These individuals have established a legacy of excellence and set the bar high for future recipients. I am so pleased to announce this year's winner of the Modelo de la Comunidad Award. The winner is the organization Excelencia in Education. Excelencia in Education was born to change the narrative about Latino college students from a focus on deficit-based diagnosis and intractable achievement gaps to focus on asset-based opportunities to improve Latino student success and meet national needs. There is no doubt this organization is dedicated to clearing the path for Latinx students. And now I'm going to ask Yvonne to share a bit more about Excelencia.
I've been a fan of Excelencia since I first learned about them. If you're not familiar with their work, please take a moment to learn more about this wonderful organization because it is truly a model or a modelo for our community. The mission of Excelencia is to accelerate Latino student success in higher education. Co-founders Deborah Santiago and Sarita Brown have worked as researchers to understand the challenges of Latino success from the secondary and post-secondary side of education. Excelencia's work is perhaps best illustrated by its founders' own words. For 14 years, Excelencia has been informing, organizing, and serving Latino student success. We continue to strategize how to leverage our role as an information source on the status of Latino educational achievement, our function as a major resource for influencing policy at the state and national level, and contributions as a widely recognized advocate for Latino student success in post-secondary education. Beyond just being a research and policy entity, Excelencia promotes Latino student success through opportunities to nominate examples of excelencia. This allows others to learn about evidence-based programs that are working. Further, they celebrate these programs at their conference and allow practitioners to talk about education and to policymakers. Whether Excelencia is happening at the grassroots level or at the national level, Excelencia is following it. Accepting the award on behalf of Excelencia is Arturo Madrid, Murchison Distinguished Professor Emeritus at Trinity University and Excelencia Board of Directors member. Please welcome to the stage Arturo Madrid.
Hefty, pretty hefty. Thank you. Mil gracias, and particularly for help with that very heavy trophy there. Muy buenas tardes y muy bienvenidos a San Antonio de Béjar, my adopted city. I've lived here now a quarter of a century, and it's the longest I've lived any place, and so I'm very pleased to be here with you on behalf of Excelencia in Education to receive this award in the name of all those young people who are successfully completing programs of study in American institutions of higher education. A little bit on a personal side, about 4 decades ago, in 1981, the College Board launched a pioneering and far-sighted initiative here in San Antonio, Béjar County, a program to increase the number of college-bound Mexican-American students in Texas. With the support of a local foundation that underwrote the cost of doing so, the College Board administered PSAT exams to hundreds of students over a 3-year period, free of charge. The program was put in place during the College Board presidency of my friend George Hanford and directed by Gilberto Ramon, a very distinguished San Antonio educational and civic leader. 2 years later, building on that pioneering initiative, George Hanford, recently named the president of the College Board, launched the National Hispanic Scholars Program with underwriting from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. The NHSP, now known as the National Hispanic Recognition Program, was directed for many years by Evelyn Davila. I was pleased to be connected to the program directed by Gilberto Ramon and to be involved in establishing the National Hispanic Scholars Program with the late George Hanford and working to implement it with Evelyn Davila shortly before I joined the board of directors of the College Board. Therefore, I'm particularly delighted to stand before you as you recognize, along with Prepárate, a successor program, Excelencia in Education, now an institution in its own right. Excelencia, on whose board I currently serve, has advanced these pioneering initiatives by addressing the logical and necessary next step in promoting Hispanic higher education participation, assuring that students who admitted to colleges and universities complete their programs of study and do not become a statistic. It does so, as you've been told, by engaging institutions of higher education and community organizations in addressing that objective. That is, it promotes and supports institutional and community-based organization officers and staff in addressing that goal, in realizing that goal. To do so, it identifies and shares best practices. It obtains and provides useful and relevant data to do so. And it networks those organizations together. I'm delighted to be a member of the board of Excelencia and very pleased to be here to accept this award on behalf of Excelencia. Adelante y gracias.
Please welcome the Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships for the College Board, Rick Cruz.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's been a wonderful day. When we come together on occasions like this, it's often easy to lose sight of some of the personal connections and the family narratives that inform and inspire our commitment to advancing students in their dreams. This morning, Jim and then Julissa did a wonderful job of reminding us of the power of stories, not just for us, but for our young people. They also remind us of the shared threads that shape the larger story of the Latinx community. Personally, my father, like many, arrived in New York City in the 70s, an immigrant without much in the way of formal education, without family, without money, but he had dreams and conviction, and he worked very hard in search of opportunity. His efforts enable me, like so many others, to stand here as first-generation college graduates, an advocate for young people in this country, a community leader, and a member of the College Board team. And more than anything, a proud Latino who knows how strong and diverse and rich our community is. I also stand here deeply hopeful that the challenges of today will give way to real change. Those hopes and dreams are reflected in the conversations we'll be having this afternoon on how we can work together to educate Latinx students for the future of America, and more importantly, how the future of America will look different because of these students. Indeed, the struggle for educational access and opportunity for our community is the struggle of America. And I'm proud to say it's the struggle to which College Board is deeply committed. Our leadership, our membership, all of you, our partners, have taken bold collective steps toward greater access and equity. And I'm proud to share that we've made significant inroads in closing participation and performance gaps for the AP. We've also seen our students use official SAT practice to increase their SAT scores by hundreds of points and apply to colleges once felt out of reach. And yet, we know that there are gaps that have yet to be bridged, and our work at College Board is focusing on closing those gaps and helping students get into and through college. We're grateful for all of you and for your collaboration, and particularly proud of the recent work we've done together, from our support of DACA students to launching the College Board Opportunity Scholarships, $25 million commitment to encourage more students to take the steps necessary to get into college. We're also eager to engage with all of you to ensure that our Latinx students are preparing not just for college, but for adulthood, developing the knowledge, the skills, the agency that will allow our community to participate fully in the civic and economic life of this country. This next panel will look at how we empower Latinx students to pursue and achieve their dreams. We'll discuss the latest academic and community-based programs that help students discover and cultivate their leadership and develop the skills they need to own their future. It's my pleasure to introduce these community leaders and education experts who represent a broad spectrum of experience and perspectives. First, Dr. Yvonne Diaz-Claes, President and CEO of HISPA, Hispanics Inspiring Student Performance and Achievement. Dr. Margarita Arellano, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students at Texas State University. Gerardo Gonzalez, a social science teacher at Lane Tech College Prep High School. And Emmanuel Rivera, a college student and track athlete at Loras College. And the moderator of today's panel, College Board's very own Barbara Cronin, our VP of Membership and co-founder of SALSA, the Staff Alliance for Latinx Success and Achievement. Please join me in welcoming them all to the stage.
Good afternoon, buenos tardes. Thank you, Rick, for that wonderful introduction. And before we begin and have the benefit of the shared knowledge of my esteemed panelists, I'm going to invite and ask each of them to introduce themselves so you can get to know them a little more, talk a little bit about your own journey and your work. Margarita, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Margarita Arellano, and I'm an Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students at Texas State University. I've been in higher education for 30 years now, and a lot of people ask me, how young were you when you started? Were you 6 years old? I actually was very young, but those 30 years have been amazing. And let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm from Nicaragua. I'm an immigrant. I'm a refugee, or I was a refugee when I arrived to the United States of America 40 years ago. And it's been an incredible experience for me. And I'm going to say real briefly why I left my country. There was a war in Nicaragua, and for those of you who are old enough to remember the Iran-Contra affair, we were under a dictatorship of the right, and there was a national strike. And my husband left to the bank, left our vehicles, he didn't want to take any, so that they were not burned. They used them to burn them in the streets if you were driving your vehicles, to the bank to get money. My husband didn't come back. My husband was taken by the government at that time, and we spent about 5-6 days, which we didn't know about him, and he disappeared. And finally, on that Friday, we found out where he was, and I was so excited. We were already married. I was so excited, and I said, okay, he's coming home. He's not disappeared. The next day, I hear in the news that the prison where he was had been attacked, and there were 200 people dead and hundreds of people wounded. Again, I thought, oh my God, now he's dead. You know, and I didn't know anything, his family, until Sunday afternoon when he came in a taxi. He didn't have money. He said, I need the money for the taxi. And he had his face swollen and a broken rib because he had been tortured in my country. So needless to say, that was a Sunday, and we were in the US on the Saturday of that week. We left 5 days after. That's how a refugee leaves their country. I have never forgotten the experience, and my life in the US has been another story. We can write books here. But one of the things that I'll tell you, I have dedicated my profession to help those students who are in need. And we're going to talk a little bit more after that. Thank you.
My name is Gerardo Gonzalez. I'm a history teacher and an AP capstone teacher, seminar and research at Lane Tech College Prep in Chicago, Illinois, which is I'm in my 7th year of teaching history at the high school that I went to. So I'm kind of in a unique position of, always wanting to pay it back, right? Those experiences that I had in high school that really shaped and helped to mold who I became, I really wanted to come back, and that was one of my goals as a teenager. So I'm very, very proud to be teaching at the school that I attended, and hoping that I can, pay it back.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to be here today. I feel very honored. My journey started in Puerto Rico as a young student secretly loving mathematics. There was not a lot of STEM initiatives to support me. It was the opposite. People thought, why do you want to study mathematics? And my educational journey really changed when I met a Puerto Rican mathematician. And he validated my vision and my dream. And I was very lucky to come to the United States and visit and work in 3 different institutions to achieve that dream of becoming a Latina mathematician, right? And later on, I went to work in corporate America, and I realized that there was a lot of need for the Latinos in corporate America to support each other, to share our stories, to find opportunities, and to share our culture and work in our communities. And that's when my aha moment happened. When I was invited to speak at a school in Newark, I left my office in a rush and drove to Newark and went into the auditorium full with students, and all of the students looked like me. I looked at the teacher and said, how many of the kids are Latino here? And he raised his eyebrows and he's like, almost all of them. And then I told my story, and later on I had a line of students that wanted my autograph. They knew I had discovered mathematics, and they wanted my autograph. And that was an aha moment. I drove back knowing that my life had changed, and I have discovered my vocation, which is not only to share my story, but to make sure all Latino professionals, especially in the highly skilled careers, step into the classrooms and really validate children's dreams. And that's what I've done for the last 11 years. We have shared over 1,000 stories with our youth. Wow. Thank you.
Amazing. Hola, bienvenido a todos. Me llamo Emmanuel Rivera. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I'm currently attending Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa. I'm studying math and Spanish there. I also run track there, and I want to say it's a great honor to be like amongst the leaders of my community, and I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, well, please. So Margarita, I'm going to go back to you because this morning's keynote, Julissa actually gave you quite a shout out as her mentor and champion. And I know as your work continues to be a mentor and supporter of students, I wonder if you could share with us what you've learned working with Latino students in higher education.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, what I have learned is amazing. You know, I can go back now and start looking at all my students who I have had through the years, and a lot of them. I have one that is a president at a community college system. I had one that is a vice president at a bank in Massachusetts. I had another one who was a chief of staff of the Treasury Department. I've had a lot of great teachers fighting in the trenches. I have had, you name it. I have some in the state, in the government of Texas, working with the state. And I look at and I remember how they arrive in college and how sometimes our students, we know they're strong. I know they're strong. And I want to see every single student that comes to my door has something that they're bringing that is positive. Because if we have high expectations and we believe in them, they're going to believe in themselves. And many times throughout all educational system, we emphasize the negative part of the student. Oh, the student has this problem, the student has this problem, the student has this problem. Well, we all have problems, but we all have to show and emphasize the strengths that they have. And that's what I was saying. One of the major things I learned is that we have to be that support. Each of us, I mean, if we do it, it's like a chain, you know, and they may bring some challenges sometimes. They're normal. I mean, we all have that part too. But we as institutions need to make sure that they come to an environment that they feel strong, that there's a lot of cultural awareness. What do they bring? Because they may come from different cultures. And sometimes our culture is seen negatively. Sometimes people say, oh, familia, they delay them, they don't do this. My family was my driving force, you know. My pride in who I am is my driving force. My father was my mentor, you know, against all stereotypes. So when we go to college, please keep that in mind. Empower the students.
Thank you. And you know, expectations has certainly played a role in the rise we see in more Latin students going to college, but yet we still see this gap on college completion. I know that many of the sessions that you all attended today highlighted specific programs and supports to help more Latinx students achieve their goals.
Thank you for saying that. I've been part of 2 great institutions, the University of Texas at Austin, where I graduated with my doctoral degree and my master's, and Texas State University, which I think is a fabulous institution and a great secret, to be honest with you. Yes, thank you, Texas State. And one thing that I'll tell you, in those 2 universities, they are in the top 5 university in the state of Texas out of 38 4-year institutions with the highest student success rate. And what makes a difference in this university is that they have worked really hard from the top. It has to come from the top in making sure that the environment is healthier for the students, that we are innovative, good pedagogy, good teaching methods with the students in the classroom, good support systems, and that's what will make students successful.
Yes, and it's great your work kind of at that end of the college pipeline. Yvonne, I know your work starts a little bit earlier in the pipeline, as early as middle school, and while we see Latino high school graduation rates rise, we still know that there are considerable achievement gaps when compared to their white peers. How does your work in the earlier grades kind of affect the outcomes for Latino students?
Thank you. Definitely, we really work in building the students' self-confidence and really looking at the role models as all the possibilities on the way forward. I always say when we visit the schools, we are not really there to give advice. We are there to share our journey. And obviously, we emphasize the obstacles we have overcome. We emphasize how did we pay for college, a common question that the students always ask. We emphasize that even now, we might have struggles. Maybe we're too self-aware of our accents or other things. But the important thing is that we've been able to develop a program that it has 3 components. One is we visit the students, and we call that the HISPA Role Model Program. We visit with the students 6 times. It's during the school day, so we will visit once a month or so. We try to have at least 2 volunteers that visit. Then we bring the students into a corporation, and we call that Imagine Day. Now they see us in our work, in our offices, in our buildings, and they see that the work that we're doing, what impact does it have in the world? And then we join together in a youth conference, which the theme is very aligned to today's panel, which is Take Action, Achieve Your Dreams. And that day, the students are doing hands-on activities with all of us. Sometimes we have 100 volunteers with 150 students. So by the end of that year, the students have no doubt on, could I do this, could I do that? Because they have met plenty of role models. So our goal, very focused, is to eradicate that as a reason why students don't pursue higher education. And that's something very doable. Of course, the devil's on the detail, and the programmatic challenges are great, but we're doing it. We, once again, celebrating over 1,000 stories shared. And we started with just 4 schools, and now this year we are in 33 schools.
That's great growth. And this partnership between the schools and with community-based organizations, certainly very important, particularly in the Latino community. Gerardo, thank you, by the way, for bringing your own cheering section. And speaking of partnering with schools, you work at the largest high school in the state of Illinois, certainly not without its challenges. Very high percent, 44% of your students are free and reduced lunch, and yet your outcomes are particularly impressive. This year, in terms of AP, over 76% of your students have earned scores of 3 or higher. Of those, I believe 3 received a perfect score in AP research, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a course you teach.
Yes.
So we want to know, what's your secret?
Lot of hard work. The credit is all to the students, and I think something that I really want to emphasize is how do we make the content that we teach, how do we make it more culturally relevant to our students? And I think, as someone who really has a passion for history, The first AP class that I took was AP European History, and I loved it. It was my favorite class. It was part of the reason why I wanted to become a history teacher were my experiences in that class. And then when I got to college as a history major, picking my classes and trying to see what type of history I want to read, and I started seeing that there are courses in Latina studies that are, history of Mexico, history of Mexicans in Chicago, and that to me was eye-opening because I didn't know that people studied that. I didn't know that that was something that you could go into academia to make a living. And so I really want to bring that into my classroom. And so my AP research class where students, they pick one project, one research topic, and they research it over the course of a year. I really encourage them to find something that's meaningful to you, find something that's meaningful to you in your life. And so, this year I have students working on case studies of their college-going experiences. What is the Latino college-going experience like? I have students that are trying to identify the differences in conceptions of machismo over 3 generations, themselves, their parents, and their grandparents, to see how gender roles have changed over time. That to me is fascinating. I wasn't even thinking about those things when I was in high school. And so to give our students access to that type of learning and those types of learning experiences, I think goes a long way.
So we'll get to hear a little bit about the Latino college-going experience. Emmanuel, first I want to thank you for joining us and representing the student perspective. Like you, I was also a first-generation student at a predominantly white institution. So when I was listening this morning to Julissa talk about the idea of belonging, it certainly resonated with me. I was wondering if you also connected to some of what she spoke about.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, transitioning from high school to college, it's really different. Where like you always have your teachers in high school always having your back, and then in college you're kind of on your own. So the idea that when you're transitioning from high school to college, you're figuring things out. Like in the first month, you're trying to figure out your class schedules, how you're gonna pay for books, whether you're gonna work or not. And then like as for our counterparts, it's kind of different where like they don't have to worry about any of that. So the idea is like you first have to establish yourself, and then after you do that, you kind of have to reach out to your faculty members where they're the ones that like help guide your steps as you go on the college experience. And I think this is where I'm very fortunate where I go to school because we have this safe space in my college called the Intercultural Programs Office, and we have 2 faculty members that actually advocate for like with Latino students or even the students of color in general. They kind of put us in these positions where we are leaders, we are like those roles that people look up to, and then that kind of just helps the other students that are coming in. Like it just gives them someone to look up to.
It sounds like a great opportunity for the students to have that sense of belonging and share their own kind of tips and best practices. This morning, Jim shared that one of the great aspects of this conference is hearing from others, hearing best practices and being able to take them back to your own organization, sharing those programs and strategies. Margarita, I know that Latino students, while we know that they still lag in terms of obtaining degrees, I wonder if you could share what are some of your best practices that can be implemented in college, both 2 and 4 year, to help students succeed, to help drive that completion rate success.
Sure. First of all, I think it's very important to know that the students' problems that they bring, some of the challenges that they have personally are huge. And I will give you an example before I give you some example of best practices. Julissa. She was a student who was not, it was an undocumented student. She had to drive every weekend to come and sell raspas here in the market in San Antonio. She was somebody who was the president of one of the best organizations at UT. She was amazing, great grades, got some of the best internships. I mean, it's amazing. Yet, one thing that I will tell you, these students are very resilient. Think about that. When you see them, think about that, because I've discovered that. Some of the best practices include creating learning communities, creating student engagement. We know now the theory says if the student is engaged in college, they most likely will stay in college. But if they feel like they go and they don't know anybody and they feel disconnected, they most likely will not persist. These are theories that have been studied. So it's important that we create those opportunities like learning communities. We have, for example, at Texas State, something called CAFE, which is careers and financial aid. We start them knowing about careers early on, freshman year. You know, one of the major things is with stress. You know, remember how many of you changed majors? Okay, so it's very stressful. Money is very stressful. So we are teaching them not only how to be better, budget better, but also how can they get the money? Where can they get money? Apply to scholarships and all of that. I will say also we have a lot of STEM programs. Hey, let's shoot for our students into the sciences. They are amazing, and I know a lot of them that are in the science field succeeding. I have one right now who's an electrical engineer in Florida, making maybe 2 or 3 times my salary, and I'm very happy. So make sure that STEMs, mentor programs, residential college where they can be in groups. So anything that you can break down the university to smaller communities, and that's what we call learning community, is very important. And I think that model can be used all throughout public education too. So don't discard it.
And you know, those challenges, they don't just begin in college. Certainly they are the same challenges that students are facing in high school and in their high school classrooms. Gerardo, as an educator in a high school, how can we advance the work that we do to support and develop Latino students in high school? Can you share some of your best practices?
Yeah, so I think that this definitely needs to occur at different levels, right? The support systems that we have in place within our classroom are going to be a little bit different than what we have at the school level and at the district level. Within the classroom, I really make sure that I raise that bar of expectations, and I don't lower it. Just because you're first generation doesn't mean that you're going to be capable of less or that you should be setting the bar lower for yourself. Attending college, while that is an achievement, good job. Now let's graduate, right? Now let's go to grad school. Let's do something else. And then within the school level, we really want to emphasize exposure to colleges, exposure to universities. And we do that by bringing in over 100 colleges and universities into our school for a big college fair. Since many of our students are low income, these are the students that are likely not visiting colleges prior to the college admissions process. And so many times they're unaware of the options that are available to them. And so by exposing them, by having them go and interact with college admissions counselors within the comfort of their own school, it eases some of those tensions that exist, and bringing families in and saying like, hey, creating this college-going culture is something that's really propelled our students to be successful.
It's great that there's the partnership from the classroom up to the school, up to the district level. I'm sure it makes all the difference. Yvonne, at HISPA, your organization focuses on inspiring students through role models. It strikes me that that is probably as beneficial to the professionals as it is to the students. Do you have best practices on both sides?
Well, definitely. I can tell you how many times I have received calls from the volunteers to tell me this is the first time ever that they had even thought about all the obstacles they have overcome to be where they are today. So I receive a lot of calls of thank you for the opportunity that you're providing me as a professional. Obviously for the corporations as well that support our work and that support the volunteer hours of the role models, is important for them because they know that these students are going to be their future employees if we help them along the way towards higher education. They know how important they are for the future of America. So it's such a triple, 4 times win, right? Because the role models volunteering, they get this amazing professional development opportunity. They get to really celebrate the culture, celebrate their achievements. We have the communities receiving these new leaders, people that have been in the office for too long and now are becoming leaders in the community. We have the school receiving the service. I always say there's these secondary effects of HISPA. One of them is the teachers learning about the careers of the 21st century, because we are in the classroom talking all these, IT and cybersecurity and all these, careers that they didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. So we're bringing that knowledge into the classroom as well. Of course, when the volunteers come into the classrooms, they might see that, we would love to help, maybe provide more books for the library here. We might want to provide Secret Santa for the students. So, there's all these ripple effects of the work that we're doing that have so many ways that we're impacting the community. So.
And when the mentors come to it and share their story, do you find that this is something that has been part of what they've done all along, or is it new to them?
No, it's been many times. Most times they've never done that. People say, I don't know, what will I say? My story is not that inspirational. And I just ask 3 or 4 questions, and next thing you know, you have a powerful story. We all have powerful stories. So it is just, that's what we do. We go into the corporations, into government offices, into professional organizations, and we kind of make people reflect on their stories. Just as an example, I had the pleasure to be here yesterday in San Antonio visiting with some of the role models that we have here. And I realized that even among themselves, they have no knowledge of their journeys. So I took that opportunity, we are here talking about HISPA and about the youth, but why don't we just spend 15 minutes learning from each other about our stories? Our encouragement to the professionals is the further that we go in our careers, the further our children will go. So it's also our responsibility to go forward as far as we can.
Yeah, so role models is a bit of a theme. We're in a room full of folks who can also be role models for others. So we encourage you all to share your own story. Emmanuel, as a student, I would imagine that you've also had role models and supporters throughout your education. Are there specific examples that come to mind that have made a profound or significant difference in your journey?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was my junior year in high school. I remember they kind of emphasized that this is the time where you need to visit college, you need to look into college, you have to apply, and things like that. I remember growing up, my parents they never graduated from high school, so it was kind of a different experience for me. I knew that college was somewhere that I wanted to go, and I just didn't know how I was going to get there. So I think the hardest part was just trying to find someone to guide me, and I think by chance, it sort of just happened for me. The person I admired the most, he was an expert in college. So I told him, hey, what do I need to do? I asked my parents, and they just have no idea. So he guided me towards, one, actually starting my applications, filling out the FAFSA, actually going to visit colleges. My parents could never take off work because that's how they support our family. Sure. So he took me and a group of my friends to visit all these colleges, and we were very fortunate. So, because me and another friend of mine actually found our schools that way. And he told me that I would always talk to him through my first year. I'm like, dude, this is really hard. I don't know if I can make it. It seemed easier just to give up, but I think I had the resilience of my mom just to not just to keep pushing through. And always talking to my mentor, he always told me that, hey, you're powerful beyond measure. You're totally capable of this. And then once he told me that, it kind of just started firing me, where I was like, hey, this is manageable, and I'm going to keep pursuing it. And if I fail, then at least I tried.
Is your mentor here?
Yeah, he is.
Who is it?
It's Jerry Pope, man. He's right there in the crowd. I wouldn't be here without him, so.
Well, I have no doubt that you'll make him immensely proud. So, in reflecting on the history of this conference and the name itself of this conference, Prepárate, it strikes me that it was likely created as a call to the attendees to prepare their students for college, to prepare your students for college completion, to prepare your students for success after college. But a lot has changed in 13 years, not the least of which is the demographics of Latinos in this country. We heard those statistics this morning. So I think that there's a bit of a paradigm shift. I think it's starting here at this conference today, because now when I think about Prepárate, I think it's a rallying cry for the rest of the country and maybe the world to prepare for the Latino students that we are all empowering to come. So there's a duality to this. It's not just the students who need to prepare, it's the rest of the country that needs to prepare for these students, because with educators and students like yourselves, they are certainly going to be on a journey to do great things, and the country is going to have to adapt and be ready. And so before we leave, I want to ask each of you to share with our audience here today how they can be prepared for these students, a bit of advice or a bit of wisdom. Emmanuel, I'll start with you.
I think first, the power of mentors, I think, could change the lives of students. They're the ones that help guide us through their steps, whether it's college or career or simply getting to college. So, and then you should always just tell them whatever's on your mind. If you believe in them, you should tell them that. And if they're making mistakes, you tell them that too, just because you never know how powerful your words can be. And the other one is helping students put themselves out there. Because maybe before, when they were in high school, they were afraid to take these risks. So by all means, I think they should go for it.
That's great advice. Yvonne, what advice, wisdom do you share with the folks here today?
Well, I want to thank everyone for the work that you do every day. Every time that I go into a school and I start a program or a partnership, I'm blown away by the commitment of the principal, the teachers. I think congratulations to you for the work that you're doing. I really commend you. I would like to encourage you to think a little bit about your own story. And I believe that many times teachers, take it for granted that maybe the students know their journey to becoming a teacher or an administrator. I think that just having the opportunity for you to just tell your story as well, maybe have a story day at school in which all of you really reflect on those obstacles you overcame, that can start the role modeling right there. I mean, you are role models every day, but how do you get there? I also want to encourage you to celebrate the strength of each student. I was a very shy student, very quiet, didn't do well in history. I wish I had you as my teacher. But math, I love. The teacher said, do problem 1 to 10, and I did problem 1 to 20. But she never really said, great job, you're working harder, or, it really took a lot of my own kind of building that self-confidence secretly and getting to that professor at college that really believed in my capabilities. I think that each student has a strength. They might be a C student, but they might be the ones that help everyone with a problem or a project. Just celebrate each one of your students, because just that little gesture can go very far away in building the self-efficacy of our Latino students.
Great advice. Gerardo, what advice or wisdom do you want to share?
I work on this, and I have been working on this myself, just being more vulnerable, just being open to sharing your experiences and really allowing yourself to, just in the same way that you said to encourage students to take chances, I think that we also need to take chances in sharing with our students what our experiences have been. It's important for our students to understand that this isn't the first time that someone has had this experience. You're not the first person to struggle in the college application process. You're not the first person to stress about how you're going to pay for this. And I think if we make ourselves a little bit more open, and if we make ourselves a little bit more vulnerable to having these conversations with our students, it helps our students to know that they have someone that they can lean on throughout this process. And if they don't have those supports at home, we can be those supports. And the only way that students will be comfortable in doing that is by making ourselves open to that.
Thank you. Margarita, your advice?
For me, two things are very important. Prepárate. And I would say prepárate, not just for the student, but ourselves need to be prepared for it. I think there's some internal change that needs to happen. I think we are the ones also who need to change and make sure that our biases, that we see the students in a very positive way. I had a student once when I was in charge of a summer bridge program. And I remember when he first got to the university that I was working at that time, he got with a tank top and with a bandana in his head. And the first thing I thought it was like, where did we pick him up? That's what I thought. That student today, he works for the state He has done his master's in the LBJ School of Public Affairs. He's very successful. And like about 10 years after, he came back and thanked me because he said, without you, I would still be in a gang in San Antonio. I had to prepare myself. I had some biases. So I want us all to work on that. It's very important we're ready. We can see beyond what we are seeing at that moment. The other thing, I think I love your point about being vulnerable. We have to be vulnerable. Our students need to see how we are, and we need to be open for that. I remember early on in my career, like maybe 15 years ago to 20, I'll say, too much. A few years down the road. I had a student who came to see me, and she was one of my, you have those amazing students, a Latina from San Benito, Texas. And she had been in my program, and she was excelling and all of that, and she comes and tells me that she had brain cancer. Oh my God. I was crying. I couldn't stop, to be honest with you, because all I was thinking was about her. And I remember she telling me, Dr. Ray, it's okay, it's okay. And then I felt so bad because I said, I should have been the one giving her support. But you know what? That meant so much to her. I have to give good news that she's still alive and doing well. So, but those are the things that we have to think about it. These are human beings. And I will tell you in college, what I used to say at UT and I say at Texas State is, when we bring the best what the state has to offer us, any student who goes to a 5-year institution is already at the top of the crowd. And if we don't retain them, if we don't make them to be successful, we're committing what I call intellectual genocide. We're being in the best of our country, and we are not fulfilling our duties with those students. So I leave you with that, whether we are in public education or in higher education, that's our job, to make sure our students are successful. And let's find ways that we don't know, but that if we are authentic and we look for the benefit of that student, we can make that happen.
Thank you. So I thank you all for sharing some really great advice, some real actionable advice that our attendees can take back with them. I thank you for spending this time with us this afternoon and sharing your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for attending this afternoon's session. Please join us back here in the ballroom for our welcome reception this evening from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Enjoy your afternoon.
Todo el mundo, vámonos, ayúdame. Cada día es igual por mi pasillo. Nunca checo a mi puerta sin oír el chiflido de un chavo que me dice que me está esperando. Lo que él debía hacer es ir y darse un baño. Y un aburrido me detiene otra vez. Y yo le finjo interés. Y cuando pronto sale del ascensor, es la imagen de mis sueños, el que yo quiero para mi bueno, el chico del apartamento 512, el que hace mi pobre corazón saltar, es el que le hago cada noche y día que no puedo entregar. El chico del apartamento 512 es el que me hace toda muda y más, es el que yo que se sueño noche y día, eres solo él. Y un viejo me invita, chica ven a verme, y le digo no me caen los viejos rabos verdes. Y camina a mi cuarto muy